Welcome to the Shutter Saga Podcast. I'm your host, Marvin Blue. Join me each week as we dive into amazing conversations with some of our industry's top leaders. We will talk about photography, business, and most of all, share the stories that have laid the foundation to our journey in this world we call photography. A couple of ways to support the show is to like, subscribe, and share the show with others. Leave those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and if you're a fan of seeing us live, we are on YouTube. Also, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Again, thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Welcome welcome all to another wonderful episode of the Shutter Saga Podcast. I'm your host, Marvin Blue. With me, as always, is just another wonderful guest, someone that's going to just, rock our socks off and just, blow us away. I'm not even going to do no grand introduction. I'm just going to say the name, Miguel Quiles. Enough said. Yes, Miguel's in the house. Miguel, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right, so just so we're going to get the controversy out of the way right now. If you're watching the show on YouTube, please humanly respond to this episode because I don't need to get hit with this bot trail because I'm new to all this, so I don't need to get attacked for having bots. I don't know nothing about bots. I'm not friends with bots. So if you're tuning in on YouTube because you're a Miguel fan, the humans, please respond and leave messages and comments and everything so we can know that this is real. Miguel is a real person. He's not a bot. This is some AI stuff,
It could be AI. It's getting really good these days. So if I'm talking, my mouth isn't matching the words coming out of my mouth, then you know what's up.
Fair enough. Miguel, how you been, bro?
Doing good, man. Doing good. I'm living it up down here in Florida, enjoying life. How's everything?
It's wonderful. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, at one point you were in New York based, right? And then you went to Florida, or was it the other way around? Or
so
residence?
No. So it's kind of crazy. So I grew up in Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
And right around 2013, I want to say 2014, somewhere in that ballpark, my wife got an opportunity to basically move up north to New Jersey. And so I was thinking about it. I'm like, I'm getting into photography. I was really early on in my career at that point. And I'm like, man, to be close to New York would be pretty awesome. And that was like the biggest shot in the arm for my creative journey, for my professional journey, just everything. Like it was just a huge shot in the arm. And so lived in New Jersey for 7 years and then ended up moving back to Orlando after having kids, and my family's here. My mom is here. She's getting a little bit older. And so I wanted to be a little bit closer to her, to run her to appointments and let her spend time with my kids and all that. So, but I travel all the time. It was great during the pandemic because, flights were pretty inexpensive and planes weren't going down all the time like they are now. But it's easy enough to just go travel, go do the work in New York or wherever, and then just come back home. So it's been great.
Nice. Now you mentioned kids. Now, what are their ages now?
So my youngest one just had her birthday yesterday. She's 1.
Okay.
And then my oldest is 6.
Okay. Oh, so they're young still.
Yeah. They're little baby beans, but they're awesome. They're awesome. I love them.
It's a great. The reason I asked this is a great segue to one of the questions that was asked that was somebody wanted to ask was how are you balancing the travel, the social media, the content creation, and everything with having a family?
Ooh, yeah. It's a little bit challenging to answer. I kind of grew up with this mentality of like, ain't nothing to it but to do it. And I just kind of operated in that way for a very long time where I don't think about stuff too much. It's just, okay, what do we got to do today? I'm going to go drop off the kids, going to go get my work done in the period of time that I have to get it done. Then I'm going to go home, get back into father mode, husband mode. When everybody's asleep, go scurry away to the office for a little bit to go and try to get some more work done. So yeah, it's interesting. I think it's all about your mindset and how you approach life. For me, my work, the career that I have, the family that I have, like those are my top priorities. And it's unfortunate because, from a friend perspective, like there's stuff going on all the time. And it's like, man, I'd like to be able to go do those things, but you got to prioritize the things that are most important to you in life. And for me, work and family are two of the biggest, top priorities. So, I think for people who are trying to figure out, how to balance these things, I think it's really just a matter of just trying to figure out, like, what are your priorities, and just put those things in their proper place in your life. And then everything else is just going to have to find a spot where it can fit in.
And so, let's take a step back here, and I want to talk about the early days of Miguel. When did you pick up the camera and decide to do this crazy thing called photography?
Yeah. So I picked up, I mean, I had played around with cameras in general all throughout high school. But to be honest, I mean, I grew up fairly poor, didn't realize it, which was a good thing. But I didn't really get into photography until after high school. Started working at a retail camera store. It was actually an electronics store. And one of the things that would pay out the best was digital cameras, camcorders, things of that nature. And so, I realized early on, I can't sell this stuff if I don't use it. And so I was big into car clubs back then, big into video games. So I would go out to car shows and things like that. And so I went out and I work at a camera store. They were very nice. They're like, hey, you can have whatever camera it is that you want. If you want to take it out in 5 payments, 6 payments, whatever it is, we'll pull it out of your paycheck. So I bought like the best camcorder I could get and the best camera that I could get. And I took it with me to everything that I did. If I went out with my like church youth group on the weekends, I'd be the camera guy taking photos of everything, go to car shows, whatever it is that I did in life, I would be the designated camera guy. And so that was the first time I got my hands on a camera. And honestly, it never dawned on me that it could be a career. It was always just, I got to get out of a lot of stuff and also get into a lot of stuff because I was a photographer. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. It was really just working in that retail store and then just being the designated guy to photograph life, and everything that I was a part of.
So at what point did I guess you give yourself the title that when you confidently said, yeah, I am a photographer? When was that, I guess, transition to dude with a camera, getting into trouble or getting out of trouble to, oh, I'm going to make a living with this, and this is going to make me
Yeah.
money?
2011, 2012, in that time frame. I was working at corporate America. I was working for a company that's no longer around called Sprint. And I was a trainer there. And then I also was a content creator in-house for Sprint, teaching the salespeople just various things, mostly about teaching them about cell phones and tablets and how to position those things with our customers, with our clientele. And then, I kind of just hit this ceiling where I knew I could do more and I was doing more, but I wasn't being compensated for it. And I just got to the point where I was like, you know what? My entrepreneurial heart, which I had been an entrepreneur for many years prior to this job, it just started beating again. And I'm like, I need to go out and just start working for myself. I don't like somebody who, doesn't understand me, somebody who maybe has their own pursuits in life, that they're going to limit me from being able to pursue the things that I want to pursue in life. And that's what I saw when I was working in corporate America. And I just I didn't want any part of it. And so I just went all in on photography and trying to learn as much as I could, as fast as I humanly could. And the rest is history.
When you broke into photography, what was what was your bread and butter, or what was Miguel known for?
Back then it was kind of funny because at the time I didn't want to be a photographer. At that point in time, I wanted to be a filmmaker, be like a videographer because I was big into just video. And so originally what had happened was I wanted to create commercials for small businesses because at that point in time, the 2010s, small businesses like YouTube is a thing. But a lot of companies weren't establishing a presence on this emerging thing called social media. And I said to myself, I could take my camera, I could go to this local business owner and create a piece of content for them that they could post up on YouTube and start to use that for marketing. And it beats paying for a billboard. It beats paying for, marketing on like a TV network, right? Like I kind of saw the writing on the wall that YouTube was going to be this big thing, and videography I thought was going to be the main thing. But as time went on, what I started to realize was that it was very difficult to have like a elevator pitch with new people. So like if you met somebody and they start talking to you and you're like, oh, what do you do? Oh, if I tell them I'm a photographer, I could show them my images very quickly, right? 2 seconds. Yeah, look at my photos right here, right? And they get a good idea of like what caliber of photographer I am. With video, that doesn't quite work like that. And, it's like, oh, you got 5 minutes to let me show you all these clips. And then if you didn't edit to be able to show it to somebody like that, like a demo reel, that could be kind of challenging. And so I just decided like, hey, this video thing, maybe I'm going to have to figure out another way to do video and just get into photography. And so I did everything early on. I photographed weddings, engagements, maternity, headshots, portraits, like anything, product photography, e-com stuff. Like I photographed anything and everything that came with a paycheck. And ultimately, I kind of landed on portraits and headshots because it just kind of was in my wheelhouse. I like people, like talking to people. And yeah, it's just, it was natural. Like it's where I needed to be. And it took a little while to kind of figure that out. Probably a good 2 years of shooting before I was like, okay, this is who I am, and this is what my business is going to be. But yeah, it's been a journey and it's been a process. And I think that, for anybody who's starting out, like you have to be okay with that. You might think like, I thought I was going to be this like wedding photographer and that was going to be the main part of my income. And then I realized I don't want to work 8 to 12 hours on my weekends, like the one day that everybody else is off, I'm going to be working 8 to 12 hours, like sweating my brains out. No, that's not for me.
No. So so most people get their introduction to you through YouTube. So, and obviously it's the content is how a lot of us learn. We always say in the early days we grab everything we cut off of YouTube, Creative Live. Where did you get your like early education from? If everyone's finding you on YouTube, where did you find everyone else when you were learning?
YouTube.
YouTube.
Yeah,
who TV. Were your I mean, who were your go-tos back then?
I mean, back then, Mark Wallace. Yeah, no, Mark Wallace on Adorama TV was one of the OGs, pioneers of teaching photography on YouTube. So I watched his content. I watched Creative Live. And so I'd watch people like Sue Bryce and Lindsay Adler and Sal Sincata and, a bunch of other people, some that don't even do this anymore. So yeah, I consumed a lot of content. And what I learned early on was that the more important thing to do beyond just like, hey, go learn a bunch of stuff was to go practice all the stuff that you think that you learned. And then you start to realize and you start to develop your own style. You start to kind of keep the things that make sense for you and the things that work for you. And then the things that don't work for you, you just chuck them. So yeah, that's kind of how I got started. I consumed every bit of content, but then I would also put that content to work. And that's how I developed my style, was doing 3 to 4 photo shoots per week for like a good 3 years. Anybody that I could get in front of the camera, whether it was a friend of a friend, a neighbor, anybody, just anybody who would let me photograph them, I would get them, to my house. I would actually reconfigure my family room into a studio and just start practicing taking photos. And it was honestly one of the most exciting times in my work career, because I could see as I would do these photo shoots, just the excitement of it was like, it was contagious. It was just like, man, Like, this is so fun. This is what I want to do. Like, this is me. This is my life. This is what I want it to be. And whatever it is that I have to do to make this the reality and to make it stick, let's make it happen. And that's where we are today.
Let's talk about Miguel the Rockstar. When did you make the decision? Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say because, like I said, I got some of my education from you on YouTube. But when did you make the decision to say, you know what, I want to go or transition? Not that you don't still do photography, because obviously you still do it at a high level, you're still performing. But when did you transition into the education space of creating content, or did you, was it the goal was to educate, or was it just to create content and say, hey, this is what I look at what I can do kind of thing, or was it was it more education based when you decided to get in front of the camera as opposed to being behind the camera?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It started in a couple of different ways. Early on, it started off because, as I've been saying, that I watch Creative Live and I watch YouTube and I name these specific people, there were a lot more people that were making content at the time. And what I felt, and maybe some of y'all who are listening to this might feel the same way, I felt like there were a lot of people that are good shooters, they're good photographers that would make videos, but they wouldn't really tell you anything. It was more of like, it's like a dog and pony show. It's kind of like, oh, look, this is what I can do. And, I felt like I was having to work really hard to watch the content to figure out, okay, well, this is how they did that. And more often than not, I couldn't figure out how they did what they did because they didn't tell me how they did what they did. So that was one of the early things early on for me, was that I wanted to create the kind of content that I needed at that time. I needed content that not only was inspirational, but I needed content that was educational. I needed to know specifics: what lens, what camera, what settings, why did you have the settings the way you had them? Why did you put the light where you put it? I wanted all of that information, not so that I could copy it, but so that I could understand what they were doing with it, so that when I do what I do with it, that I have a better jumping off point. So that's kind of where it started. The first real piece of content that I made was actually inspired by a friend that I used to work with at Sprint. He actually left working at Sprint to become a professional photographer before I did. And when he left, I jumped into it maybe like 4 or 5 months later. And, I was kind of looking at him to see like, how was he doing with his business since he had such a head start. And one of the things that he and I would talk about was always like, oh, you're able to do these things because you have this gear and I don't have that gear yet. And it was always this excuse of, I can't do this or that because I didn't have the gear that you had. And so one day I just decided, you know what? I'm pretty sure that if I take my entry-level kit and then I shoot with my professional kit and I shoot the same thing in the same circumstance, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. And so I made a video basically doing exactly that. I had a model at my house, shot with a Canon, I think it was a 7D with a 51.8, the little cheap lens. And then I had a 5D Mark II with like their 24 to 70 L series lens, the 2.8. And I basically shot the same person side by side with two setups. One was like a $700, $800 setup. The other one was like a $5,000 setup. And the funny thing was, I actually at that time had made friends with different instructors and different personalities in the industry. And I sent them the images. I stripped the EXIF data. I was like, hey, one of these was taken with a cheap camera, one with an expensive setup. Tell me which one you think is which. And what was hilarious was people were getting it wrong left and right. So at that moment, I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. And so I filmed the video, posted it up on my YouTube channel, and just kind of went about my day. That same day, I was photographing this boy band here in Orlando, Florida, of course, because that was our thing in Orlando, is for pumping out boy bands. And
who was it? Who was the boy band?
I don't know that they're still together, but the group was called Far Young.
Okay.
And yeah, you haven't heard of them.
Say Old Town.
Oh no. That would have been pretty cool. I loved
Yeah.
O-Town. No, so I was doing this photo shoot and doing my thing, and whenever I'm working, I don't really have my phone on me, so I'm not checking for messages. And again, this is like the early 2010s, so like it wasn't like it is today. But I wrapped up my shoot and I went outside and I noticed I was getting all these text messages from people. Congratulations. I saw your post and I'm like, what is everybody talking about right now? And so Petapixel, which, they're still a really big photography blog, but back then they were massive.
Oh yeah.
They reposted my video and written an article about it. And I got, I probably had like a handful of subscribers. And by the time I had walked out, I was at like 3,000 subscribers. Like it was insanity, and lots of just interactions, people commenting on the video. And that's where I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something. I think, the way I think is different than what a lot of people are seeing in the photography space. And maybe I need to do more with creating content. And so that's kind of what got me started, in the road of content creation.
No. When did boss come? No, I'm kidding. When did the that's
What it was.
so you know what? If everyone's gonna probably listen in, if they don't know the backstory, so the backstory is in that this was my perspective of the story. So Miguel, please correct me or fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
So Miguel, another mentor of mine, Sal Sankata, and another mentor friend of mine, Vanessa Joy, are three very prominent names in our industry. They have platforms, they have online platforms, teaching, etc. You name it. All three of them have been on YouTube at numerous times, putting out content. Vanessa with her numerous contents and doing the budget gear photo shootouts that she does, and Miguel's with his content, obviously through education, and then Sal with his behind the shutter content. Somewhere down the line, someone decided to go on a Reddit thread was created, and they were going on about how they have all their subscribers are bots and this and that. And I'm like, no, we're real people, but there's just this story that caught wildfire. And then, of course, when the internet gets a hold of something, people take it and run with it. And then people decided they were victims because the alleged bots that Miguel has and Vanessa has. So it turned into this the way we lead into things are, if you're going to, try to call us out on something we know it's not true, we just take it away from you by making jokes about it to take away its power. So that's where the bot jokes are constantly us talking about bots are coming from. So I just want to give you.
No, what's funny though.
Am I spot on to what happened?
You're mostly right. You're mostly right. The only thing was they didn't actually bring me into it at all.
Okay.
They were really going after Sal specifically, and then this like network kind of came out from there. Where
guilty by association.
Yeah, so like then Vanessa got hit, and then Michael Anthony got hit, and I never came up in the conversation, so I was kind of just on the outside, hearing all this stuff, and I was just like, "These are my friends. I know them."
It was the picture that when you was looking at something, somebody took a picture of it.
Yeah,
I made a post that said Sal teaching Miguel about the bots, and that's how you got dragged into it. That's what
it was when all this happened. We were actually at an event that Sal had put on in Vegas, which so when it came up, we were all kind of talking about it, and I just thought to myself, like, sometimes I could be a little bit of a troll at heart, and I was like, what I think it would be funny is, like, since we're all here together, if you could, we could take a picture of me looking at my phone, and I could put like a little AI bot on the screen, and we could all be looking at it, and Sal could be, pointing at my phone saying, like, this is how you grow your subscribers, and it's like just being silly. At a time when all these people were claiming that, they were botting traffic and all this kind of stuff. And so, we just kind of leaned into it and just made it into a joke. And and it went nowhere. The whole thing just fizzled out because it was stupid. Like people don't understand. They don't understand how YouTube works in general. Like the average person thinks that, if you have 1 million subscribers, you should be getting 1 million views on your videos. And it doesn't work that way. Like, it would be cool if it did, but it doesn't work that way. Your subscriber count doesn't necessarily correlate to the number of views. And, my channel is a prime example of that. I had at the time, I had posted this video and I had maybe 30,000 subscribers, somewhere in that ballpark. And I got over 100,000 views within like the first week of the video posting. So if it was all about subscribers, I never would have reached that kind of viewer milestone. That video now is almost at 2 million views, and I don't have 2 million subscribers on my channel. So the two are not correlated in any kind of way. It comes from just a general misunderstanding of how YouTube works. And, it is what it is. And it's kind of a difficult spot to be in as a content creator to try to explain that to people who don't do YouTube for a living.
Yeah.
It's like somebody like, you see a basketball player, you see LeBron James, like, struggling. And it's like, well, hey man, how come you're struggling? How come you're not scoring points? And he's like, well, the game is like this and they're running these kind of plays. And it's like, I don't know anything about that. All I know is like, I see you trying to shoot a jumper and you're missing all the time. And it's like, there's more to it than that. There's more, complexity to the topic. And YouTube is no different.
Yep. It's the same way with podcasts when they say, hey, man, when somebody chimes in there, hey, I listen to your show. You should get so-and-so on there. I'm like, oh, yeah, thank you so much for letting me know that. Like, again, it was like they leave out the part of like, oh, do you know that this person has a schedule and that we're in 2 different time zones and this person doesn't do podcasts. They won't do anyone else's content. They only do their own content. It's like there's so many variables. I'm like, yeah, but hey, thanks for the advice. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just take it with a grain of salt.
Roll with it.
It's just
roll with it.
It was just so funny to see it. And then again, the part that made me laugh the most is the people that were all about speaking about it, and they were talking about how they were affected negatively because of this. And I'm like, how are you affected by someone having a high subscription count? Like, it doesn't stop you looking at YouTube or looking at stuff. So that's why I was like, that's where the humor for me comes into play.
Because I mean, your common sense kicks in, and it's like, okay, this is dumb. Like, this is straight up dumb. Like the fact that we're even like that even became a thing that was posted and was discussed is dumb. And what's funny is just like you get all the experts, the armchair, experts to come out and they're like, well, it's because of this and because of that. And I'm, it's like you have no idea. Like, Sal is the type of guy, and you and I know him. He's the type of guy that when he goes into doing something, he looks to just absolutely dominate in whatever it is that he does. And when he decided, like, hey, I'm going to give this YouTube thing a look, we talked about it. And I told him, like, dude, if you apply everything that you're doing right now with all the different businesses, Shutter Magazine, Shutter Fest, just everything that you're involved in, if you just apply that towards YouTube, you would crush. And sure enough, that was probably the easiest prediction in the history of predictions. But like, I knew that he would find success on the platform just doing what he's been doing for the last decade plus. You know what I mean? Like, when he started out, I was watching his content when I thought I was going to be a wedding photographer. I was watching his content back then. Yeah. And I just knew, like, the way that he would get onto YouTube and he would do very well for himself. And we're seeing exactly that.
Like I say, you look at the comments, both positive and negative. I always try to steer towards the positivity that comes, even like with my show. I've had the quote unquote people, the experts, reach out to me. Hey, I've produced. I work as a producer for a lot of different podcasts, whatever. Here's some suggestions I have that but if you want to work with me some more, we can definitely get you on the right track. I'm like, dude, this is, again, I said day one, this is something for fun. I get to catch up with friends. Get to talk shop, talk about, my biggest thing was I wanted people to understand, like, everyone has a story. You see the finish line. When you look at us, you're looking at our day of finish line where we're at today, but you don't see the 10 years or 15 years that was behind it to get us to where we're at today. Like, Miguel didn't wake up and he's produced hundreds of content out there, which goes to my next question that I'm getting ready to ask. But he didn't produce all these hundreds of content videos out here overnight. It took years. Even if you just did the algorithm of, I'm going to do one video per week religiously, no matter what. Well, that's, if you
years,
500 videos, that's, 10 years worth right there, because it's 52 per year and all that. Same thing with the show. Like, I was just like, let me just get, everything for me was a checkpoint. Let me just get to 5 episodes, and then I feel like I got some steam here. And then I was like, oh, now I'm looking. I was like, oh, we're getting ready to hit 20. Oh, we're getting. Oh, well, I told myself when I hit 100 episodes, I'm going to make sure this 100 episode, show I have someone special for. And it's like I'm already planning for the 100th episode, but I'm like, wait, I'm only about to hit 20. What am I going to do with the other 80s? So let me scale it back, and just again, just the process, keep showing up and repeating, wash, rinse, repeat. And that's where it really counts, is putting the content out there. You can talk about it today and do nothing, or you can just start doing something. And then 2 years from now, you look back, you're like, oh, wow, I've hit these checkpoints because I started from day one. So the segue to the question I had with the creating content, how have you been able to keep your motivation high when it comes to creating the content, the process, the creativity behind it, like what you decide you're going to do? Like, how does that go with you? And then how are you able to keep your spirits up in those, in that atmosphere, when it comes to like creating content?
Yeah, I mean, I think that keeping your spirits up, you know, that's not always going to be a thing, right? Like, unless you're coming out of high school and you've never worked before, I'm going to tell you all a secret. When you're working, there's going to be times where things are great and you're having a great time and you're making money and you're happy and, nothing can go wrong. And then there's days where you just hate getting up to go to work. And all of a sudden something changes. Maybe you get a new manager, new schedule, new whatever. And all of a sudden you love going back to work again. You get a new role. Life is the same. Content is the same. Being a YouTuber, being a content creator, there's going to be some days where everything is great. And then there's certain days where you're just like, man, why am I doing this? What's the point of this? You make a video that you pour, hours and hours and hours into, and then maybe it just gets a handful of views, because it doesn't resonate with the audience. And so, a lot of that, you don't look at it as, hey, this video didn't perform properly. You look at it as, oh man, people don't listen to me anymore. They don't like me, blah, blah, blah. Like, it becomes this personal thing when it isn't that. Like, it's not a personal thing at all. It's just your mind is playing tricks on you, and it's telling you, it's almost that imposter syndrome that kicks in that tries to tell you that, hey, maybe this isn't for you. So I think being okay with the fact that, it's going to be a struggle sometimes, but the reality is doing this is way better than the alternative. Doing this is way better than me. Prior to getting into this, when I was working for Sprint, I worked in a call center. And for anybody who's listening to this, if you've ever worked in a call center, you probably know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
It's unlike bro. It is nothing like what you think it is. Like, every single second of your day is micromanaged. You are like a robot that is tethered to a computer. And, like, hey, for some people, they thrive in those environments and in those conditions. And for me, I felt like, I forgot what movie that was, where you feel like you're just living deja vu every single day, like nothing changes. Everything is the same. And, this new life as a photographer and as a content creator, it's what you make it to be every day. If you want it to be this fun, exciting thing where you're traveling every day, go do that. You could totally do that. If you want it to be this chill thing where you sit back and you're more, you contemplate the topics and strategize and plan, and you could totally do that as well. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I maybe I'm old school in that sense, where it's just like, I have no illusions as to what work is supposed to look like. And it's not all going to be, candy canes and unicorns. There's going to be days where it's tough. There's going to be days where, things are uphill, and hopefully you get good people around you to help you, to support you, to lighten the load, that you have. I don't even know if any of this is even answering your original question, but that's kind of where my brain took me.
No, it's still good stuff. I mean, if someone needs a deeper dive, we can always have Miguel on for another episode down the road, and we could just do a whole Q&A. Because I mean, I literally, like,